The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy and our galaxy as well, this is ForceCenter presents OtherCenter's Life Ranked. I'm Ken Napzok, Kenneth Allen Napzok. Make it sound even longer.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw presents Joseph Aaron Scrimshaw here on OtherCenter.
Wow. Okay. My name has changed, but I'm just going to go by Jennifer Landa. Keep it simple.
Beautiful indeed. There you go. There you go, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's a special episode of OtherCenter. We love doing Star Wars Ranked, but years ago on my other feed, I started a show called Life Ranked. That made a lot of fun, and Joseph and I have been having a lot of fun bringing some of our past kind of podcast formats and ideas over to the OtherCenter world to explore some things. And we've been doing these life ranks, comfort foods, favorite video games. And now we are going to turn our eye to something that, well, I think we often talk about here on ForceCenter and OtherCenter, but now we're actually going to dive right into it. And this probably won't be the last time. Today, our life ranked episode is our favorite bands / musicians. That's going to be left up to us to determine as we go through this list. We each have 5 choices. No honorable mentions. Will others get mentioned? I'm sure, maybe, but we're going to just get right to it. I obviously talk about music a lot. Joseph talks about music a lot. We have our influences out there. I think people in ForceCenter land know, oh, this is going to be a big list. Oh, here we go. I got the names that are probably going to show up. But I got to tell you, Joseph, I'm really excited because we get to hear from Jennifer today on music.
I'm so thrilled that Jennifer can join us because, yes, longtime listeners will be like, they can probably make our list for us, but we have no idea. I have a couple guesses for Jennifer, but I'm so excited.
I kind of struggled with this one, to be honest. I was like, who are my favorite artists and musicians and bands? But I got it. I'm excited to share.
Yep. As I take a big swig of an energy drink I need today, I'll say this, at least for my list, I went with some of the bigger names because it's not just about the music. It's about the way they influenced me as a person, helped build me as a person, maybe occasionally tore me down as a person, and also influenced some of my own creative choices in my life. So that's why they're some of the biggest choices. And it's so hard to leave off like favorite bands, like bands and songs. And I want you all to know about new bands. And man, you guys haven't heard Child Seat? You guys got to hear Child Seat. My tendencies are to do that. So we're not here to discuss that. I've even left off one name that's I'm a huge fan and hugely influenced by in the last couple of years. But I felt because I really only truly appreciated and discovered this artist over the last couple of years, despite a long career from them, I was like, I'm not going to discuss them today. So it's hard, Joseph. We always say life ranked is hard. Star Wars ranked is hard. This is really, really hard.
This is really difficult, and I'm really trying to approach this as a sampler episode because I think we could do deeper dives on some of these bands, the influences. I was making my notes and saying, like, remember, you got to keep this short. There are 3 of you. We only have so much time to record this episode. You got to contain yourself. And I basically wrote I was like, I want to jot down a couple songs for each band, and I wrote my my ranked list of top songs for every one of these bands too. It's hard to contain.
See, I didn't do that, and I'm glad I didn't. It was maybe mostly a time thing, but now, yes, I would have been like you. It would have been 20 songs deep on why you need to know this artist. So, Jen, you've already said it's hard. I'm excited to get to your list, and we're going to dive right in. No more caveats, no more explaining our choices. We begin our list, our favorite bands / musicians / artists in the music world, beginning with Jen's number 5.
My number 5, which now I'm wondering if it might be Joseph's, is Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
Yes. So my dad loves Frank Sinatra. So I grew up listening to him a lot. And I was a teenager and everyone was like, you listen to Frank Sinatra? But I love Frank. And the reason why, one of my favorite albums of his is the quintessential album, in my opinion, Sinatra at the Sands with the Count Basie Orchestra. It is a live album that they recorded at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas in 1966. And it's Frank. He's so loose. He's charming the crowd. He's working the crowd. The band is like playful and they have such a great like kind of relationship. And it just really, I feel like he breathed new life into like some of his old standards, like Luck Be a Lady Tonight, Fly Me to the Moon, all those. And it also is kind of like a time capsule of that swinging 60s era. It just transports you to literally to a different time.
Mm. Well, Joseph, you have entered the chat.
Oh boy, I'm trying to contain myself. This is amazing. I didn't know that you liked Sinatra. We can do 30 episodes on Sinatra. As you're talking, I'm going through my mental list of my favorite bits from that album. One of my very favorites is somebody from the crowd shouts "one more," and he goes, "One more what? That's what I'll be saying to the bartender in a minute. One more."
Exactly. Yes. How'd you all get in my room?
Yeah, how'd you all get in my room is a classic that they all pass back and forth. It's so great. But yeah, he talks about his entire life. You might have heard recently that I've turned 50 years old, and I'm here to tell you that's a dirty communist lie, straight out of Hanoi. That one.
Yes. Right. I mean, there are definitely like he's cracking jokes that were obviously of the time, but the music is just I put it on and it's an album that I can listen from start to finish.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's one of the early ones I had, and it's a celebration of his 50th birthday. It's a whole tour, and man, fabulous. But I am going to contain myself because yes, Mr. Sinatra is on my list.
This is a great challenge. Yeah, we talked about maybe exchanging ideas, and then I just forgot to respond to an email and didn't send my ideas out. And now here we are. But this will be a lot of fun, and speaks to the power of music, and speaks to what we were talking about earlier. A big surprise from Landa out of the gate. This is
yes,
cool.
Great to be surprised.
Great to be surprised. Well, that's Jen's number 5. Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra himself. Joseph, we'll go to your number 5.
My number 5 is a band, but the lead singer was quoted as saying his favorite singer was Frank Sinatra, and it blew people's minds because my number 5 is Guns N' Roses. Axl Rose gave an interview. I think he told MTV or Rolling Stone. I think they're probably expecting I don't know, it was the Led Zeppelin singer. Robert Plant's my favorite singer. Nope, he's like Frank Sinatra. And at the time I was like, what? Because I just knew Frank Sinatra is like that old guy that Phil Hartman makes fun of.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I didn't fully understand. We'll talk about that at other times. But yeah, I bring up Guns N' Roses relatively often on the podcast, so not a surprise at all. Ken, I was like you. As I went through this list, it was about the music, it was about the songs, but I realized the artists that I was gravitating to all kind of had a story of how they fit into my life, and particularly when they first came into my life, what did they mean to me, and what did they fulfill? And for me, Guns N' Roses was that... I've talked about a lot. I was, scrawny and nerdy, and I definitely had some good times, but definitely had some real bad times of being bullied. And this is around a time where my parents are starting to get a little concerned about this new rock and roll music. They grew up with the Beatles and the Stones, but I think my parents saw me watching the Sweet Child of Mine video and like, who are these people? What are they? What are they can convince my child to do? Why are they screaming so much? So they were dangerous. They were so dangerous. On my 14th birthday, I went to the record store and I knew I wanted Appetite because I'd heard Appetite for Destruction. I'd heard Welcome to the Jungle on the radio. I'd heard Sweet Child of Mine. I'd heard Paradise City, and I knew like those are all the same band. I got to get that, and I was all set to get an album, and then I was like, I might need to hide this from my parents, so I have to get a cassette. So I got the cassette because I might need to hide it. So it was definitely the danger, it was definitely the edge, but it was also, to be perfectly honest, it was such a cathartic release because I was getting to the age where I was understanding more about the world and bad things about it, and being bullied and feeling left out and feeling ostracized and stared at by my parents, and I needed an outlet for that frustration. And Guns N' Roses absolutely was that. other thing I'll say really quickly, musically, is they are very, very, they get lumped in with the hair bands of their era, but musically they are very different. That became very powerful to me. A lot of that hair band music is very bright, like literally knobs on amplifiers turn to bright, bright, bright. It's screechy and poppy. And Guns N' Roses come from a background of blues, and Axl Rose grew up gospel singing, and he loved Sinatra's ability to bend a note, and he brought that into heavy metal. And there's just a lot about the music that is, in my opinion, it's darker, it's bassier, it's bluesier, and that spoke to me and helped shape my opinions about art. That Guns N' Roses sounded a million times different to me than Poison, and it means the world to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, first of all, this is a surprise that it's quote this low. I was expecting it to be higher. I've always, since the early days of knowing you've loved the band, and I've been intrigued by it. I don't know why. It's almost unfair to you to say you like Guns N' Roses. Anyone can't like anything. I associate them with that era and walking around junior high with people in their jean jackets with Dawkins patches on them and Guns N' Roses. I just grew up with that point of view. And so I was like, I can't imagine Joseph doing that, but you explained it in such a beautiful way and have always explained it well. And I really agree with you. There's a reason, and there's nothing against those other bands. I don't know, maybe Poison's on Jennifer's list, but I think you're speaking to, the tendency we have to just look at one artist or genre and write it off because it isn't us or doesn't speak to us, I should say. And then you dig in, you find the true artists beneath it. There's a reason they became at a time the biggest band in the world, without a doubt. And they were heard everywhere, and their influence was everywhere. And other bands tried to copy them, or other bands were in the same genre but never quite hitting the same notes. Literally, I think you're explaining it perfectly well. There is a great tapestry of influences in their work.
Yeah, and still going strong. And I don't think it is just nostalgia. I think it is the quality of those songs that have really survived. That they're still packing stadiums literally across the world. Yeah, and with lots of these artists, asterisks. There are definitely some of their lyrics that I do not support, and things that they have retracted and all that. But that is the nature of art. So that's my number 5.
It's a great number 5. I'm going to move to my number 5. But Jen, I do want some thoughts on Guns N' Roses and Joseph loving Guns N' Roses.
I mean, I guess, I am a little surprised. But that's a great way of describing them because they do have more of a blues sound and, like you're saying, Warrant, Poison, and it is a real testament to like their music that you can listen to it now and it's very enjoyable, where I probably would not be listening to Cherry Pie over and over again. No. You know what I mean?
Karaoke bar.
Yeah, exactly. The karaoke bar, maybe.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Well, Oh, sorry, Joseph. Sorry.
No. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm
cutting myself off.
Yeah, that's the joke. We're going to work really, really hard. We have a time crunch today, and that's a good thing because this would be a 3-hour episode. Music Center is on the way. So I have a number 5. So this is what's great about this list. That's a weird term. Great. I have this top 5. I've had this list in place for a decade, right? Without a doubt. We're doing this. I got it. I don't have to think about it. But over the last few years, a slot opened up because one of my favorite artists, let's just say he got canceled for being the very thing he has always said he was in the songs. And I'm not saying that like begrudgingly, like I'm bummed to have to remove him. It was just like, oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was all too real for a reason. And I don't explore his music as much anymore is what I'll say. So he's not on the list. And that opened up a slot. I was like, oh, my God, who's on this list now? And who do I talk about often? And who do I reference? And who am I influenced by? And I have always been a fan of this artist. I call myself a greatest hits fan, meaning I know the big hits, but never explored beyond that. And then that started to change. With a good friend of mine who was, in addition to being the biggest Aha fan of the world, was also the biggest fan of this artist I knew. Took me to see him in what ended up being one of his final world tour, and that is David Bowie. This is a legend for a reason. And as always, there's a reason they're legends. But I think I found, and even 2004, when I saw him down in Anaheim, I was still like, I was blown away. He did a 2.5-hour concert. Took a 5-minute break, maybe at most. I know T Swift just did 3.5 hours without a break on the Eras tour. I get it. But Bowie was in his 50s here. Even then, it wasn't the journey. It was the last few years as I started to return to stand-up and struggle with how I was going to do that. I was getting better, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. Who was I on stage? Who was I as an artist? What did I want to say with the world? My views were slightly changing. How is that going to affect my art? And that is very much the journey of Davy Jones 2, that had to become David Bowie. And the Bowie that we all would know wasn't that Bowie at first. And the stories of him in 1971 being ignored by the Hollywood American music press as he's being paraded around, as he goes to Glastonbury, performs Changes, and it's a acoustic B-side version of a song he had not yet fully realized because he didn't know who he was. There's a great quote in that documentary about 1971 based on the book by David Hepworth that's about Bowie knew what he was in his mind. He just couldn't translate that to the stage. And he was going through that. And I started to engage with that. And that's starting to inform me more than it ever has before, than his work has ever found before. He's also just fun to sing along with, too. And he's a damn good singer. But I'm obsessed with the idea that he's like, not much of a music fan. That's how I get my ideas out to the world. Then there's a great doc. There's several great Bowie docs out there. But there's one that focuses on like the last 5 years of his life or the last chapter of his life. And he was battling cancer, didn't let anyone really know about that. And he still was working on a Broadway play, still putting music out. And that really sealed it for me about the type of person maybe I want to be. And again, he's someone who's very much not perfect and very much has some stuff in the past because, he was a rock star in the early 70s, which was a different and special time. So there's a lot of things there, and we can learn from the mistakes just as much as we can take inspiration from everything else. So that's it. I could talk. I got to shut up because it's David Bowie. I just absolutely love everything he's done.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, we could do a Bowie episode too, because I have been becoming far more interested and obsessed with him. And in an interview that just one of those snippets that come across social media that Ken, I know you're fascinated by. Just you're scrolling along and some Bowie wisdom pops up. It's an interview that was going around with him talking about. Somebody asked him like, "When do you know a recording is good?" And he's like, "Well, when I'm a little scared, when it's a little beyond what I normally do, and I'm not sure if it'll work. That's about where you should be when you're making art." He's just such a champion for art of not safety, but pushing yourself. And like that quote helped me on the first short film I was making, because I felt like I'm a little uncertain of what I'm doing. But if it's good enough for David Bowie, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those clips. They pop up all the time. There's a famous one of him challenging MTV in the early 80s, but not playing black artists enough and day partying them out of the rotation. And there's that. And there's my roommates were big fans, and they had the Bowie internet CD back in 99 where he had his own internet service. And all those interviews of him just absolutely predicting the future, good and bad, on the internet. It's fascinating stuff there. So that's my number 5 choice. Jen, I don't know where you stand on Bowie. Fan of Labyrinth, fan of his music. I don't know. This is a mystery.
Right. Yeah. I was never into Bowie. I've come to appreciate him later on in life, and really him as an artist, and his kind of fluidity with gender, and how he was androgynous, and he challenged societal norms. And I think he was a very, very important artist to so many people. And I would love to see those documentaries, actually.
Highly recommend them. They're all great there. The Moon Age Daydream one is an art piece in and of itself there. So that's my number 5. We're going to push on because we have to our number 4 choices. And Joseph, we'll start with you.
Okay, so my number 4 choice is one that I don't know if it's on Jennifer's list, but we connected on it recently on another Center episode because Jennifer had used a track in one of her great social media posts. But my number 4 is the Beastie Boys. I feel bad just saying it and not having somebody else shout part of it with me. One of those things that makes them unique. It's so distinct, and then it's easy to make fun of because it's so distinct, but it's so powerful of the shouting together. So for me, I absolutely love their music. I love how it changes and evolves. In the general scope of things, they don't have that huge of a catalog of albums, but the amount of growth and change is really amazing from album to album. So I could go on and on about specific songs, but for me, it was about how they came into my life. So senior year of high school, I'd been playing in this high school rock band, and there'd been some friction. Everything was kind of about all of the 80s bands. We played all sorts of Guns N' Roses songs, but we played older rock songs, and every once in a while the guitarist twisted my arm into playing an Eric Clapton song I didn't like. All sorts of other things. Anyway, it was a time of great change, and I really wanted to evolve as a person, as a drummer, and a lot of things happened in my senior year where I had fights early in the year with some people, and then once I was a little separated from them, including the guitarist, our little high school band broke up, and then me and the bass player formed another one, and a lot of our attitudes opened up. And one of the things that happened is another friend is like, you guys know the Beastie Boys. Like, yeah, I know Fight for Your Right to Party and No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and they're cool. And Hey Ladies, I've seen the videos. They're cool. And he's like, no. You don't know the new Beastie Boys. and gave me a cassette with Check Your Head in particular. And the song that just blew my mind was So What You Want, which was the big hit off of it.
Yeah.
And I had been, my dad had been teaching me drumming, but I'd been practicing drumming mostly to classic rock and to modern heavy metal. And listening to the Beastie Boys, obviously they did not invent it, but they're the way it sounded to me. So much looser, so much more experimental, so much if something sounds kind of off, that's maybe actually a good thing because it just wanted to sound weird and fresh. And I just sitting alone in my room, just like drumming with my hands on my drawing board, like massively opened me up as a drummer. And it was entirely because of the Beastie Boys. And just their whole attitude of everything about them is just sort of, it's fun. Even in songs that are a little bit more serious or have a little bit of harder edge, there's always that spirit of fun and that spirit of like their music is great and there's a ton of precision to it, but almost all their songs sound like they were just goofing off. And that spirit of exploration and fun is what I go back to all the time. Throughout their whole career, they have, I think, albums that have that spirit of fun in discovery. But I had made a joke recently on social media because it's true of when I'm in a bad mood, I need to check, am I getting enough sleep? Am I having enough to eat? Have I talked to friends? Have I listened to all of Paul's Boutique? Maybe that's what I need.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, you can't listen to them and not have a sense of fun and joy, in my opinion. So Beastie Boys.
Jen, fun and joy, Beastie Boys.
Oh my God. I'm glad I didn't put it on my list because I was going to. Paul's Boutique. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I karaoke. So What You Want. I'm as cool as a cucumber in a bowl of hot sauce. Like I love them. And they just had so much energy. I think I mentioned this before. I saw them years ago at Irvine Meadows in Orange County with L7 and House of Pain.
Oh, L7. Gail Greenwood, L7. Belly.
Oh, it was so much fun when they came on stage and they were jumping around and everyone was singing their lyrics. It just, they loved to perform. They loved each other as friends, and you could just really feel that.
That camaraderie.
And what I love about Paul's Boutique specifically is it kind of felt like almost like a collage, the way that they would, blend these sounds together and samples. It just felt like, because I love to collage, it felt like decoupage, but musically. It just was really such a great album.
Yeah, I was reading some more of the history about it recently that I didn't know, and how some of the tracks with all those layers of samples and different beats. Some they put together purposefully for the lyrics, but some a DJ had just been working on, and it's like, you don't want to rap over this. It's like 8 layers of samples and drum beats, and like, yeah, we can rap over that. And that density is part of what makes it so good musically, and also just I've listened to that album for years, and just recently I've become obsessed with the line, I'm charming, I'm dashing, I'm phony paper passing that Nick's check cashing. Like, that's an amazing rhyme. And you can listen to that album and discover new things all the time. Phony paper passing that Nick's check cashing.
This is amazing. So Jen, I love this. Almost made your list. And another great choice from Joseph here. My relationship with them is, other than Sabotage was big at the time I was in radio, enjoyed it. But my relationship to them is almost 0-0. And here's why. Licensed to Ill comes out November 1986. All the kids in my school, it's about 5th grade for me, were like, Beastie Boys is where it's at. I was starting to learn about music and started to be allowed to learn about music in my home if we go to there. And I came home with a cassette copy of Licensed to Ill. I told my mom I am a fan of Beastie Boys, Mom. And I remember maybe about a week later, I remember this distinctly. I remember the purple chair I was sitting in. And Mom came down and had an article, Newsweek, I don't know, and said, "You like this band Beastie Boys?" And I said, "Yeah, Mom." Josh gave me the cassette. It's great. And she goes, "Well, I'm reading in this article that kids at their concerts sniff glue and do drugs. You are not going to be a fan of Beastie Boys." And I had to give up my cassette. So, just kind of the lingering things of childhood. I never went back and revisited the band because I probably felt I was letting Mom down if I did. So,
and did you shout, "Oh, Ma, you're just jealous. It's the Beastie Boys"?
Joseph, I wish I had listened to the song long enough to pick up that lyric to highlight it. So I owe it to myself to go back. This is a band whose influence is just unquestionable. And it's just funny. Just hearing you both just rave about this. And I was like, nope, I had it yanked out of my hands.
No. So awful. It's so awful.
Man.
So that's a great number 4, Beastie Boys. I'll go with my number 4. Jen will close here. Number 4. And you know what? I do think there's a tie. There's a thematic tie here. I didn't realize till discussing it. This 4th slot, it's a band from the 90s. There's 2 bands in a parallel universe. I would go another direction because it's a great band. It's one of my favorites. Joseph, I think actually you know the members of Semisonic, Dan Wilson, Jake Slichter, and Jacob Slichter, Jake Munson, right?
John Munson, yeah.
John Munson, yeah, thank you. Smart, wonderful, heartfelt band. They're back together. Got a new album coming out. Closing Time, all that stuff. Sure, great. I love that band. That represents probably more who I am. And just some nice artist guys with hearts on their sleeves. But I go the other direction with Oasis coming in number 4. The fact that I love Oasis to the degree that I do and still do. Just saw Noel Gallagher at the Greek in LA here. Seen Oasis many times, about 4 or 5 times back in the early 2000s. I'm still mad for it. But they are, especially at their height, a drunk, drugged out group of jerks. Was not who I was. In fact, had not done drugs, still have not done drugs. I'm a goody two-shoe boys who doesn't listen to Beastie Boys. I didn't have alcohol until I was 26. So when I fell in love with Oasis, they represented everything I couldn't be or felt I wasn't allowed to be. And they are, to me, the battling Gallagher brothers, what I kind of want in rock stars sometimes. Are they horrible? Are they bigger than life? Are they kind of a-holes? Yeah, that's kind of what I want. I don't want shoegazers, even though they got a lot of power from just standing still on stage. So I absolutely fell in love with them. There was, of course, a weird, infamous pop culture battle between Oasis and the band Blur. It was always said Blur wrote songs for Sunday morning. Oasis wrote songs for Saturday night. And I think because I wasn't allowed to go out on Saturday nights as a kid or discovered of doing so in high school and college, lest I fall into sin, I think I fell in love with that. And I think they also represent, from an artistic side, a straightforward approach. Are they as deeply artistic as some of the artists already discussed here today? Are they? No. Are they directly influenced by so many of the bands that came before? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was part of the magic for me. Even in songwriting stuff now, I want to be deep or want artists to be deep. But also there's something for a chorus you can sing at a bar while you're drunk and how that connects to a base level in a lot of people. And I think that's what they do bring. So still to this day, big Oasis fan. I even to the point, cut my hair, brought in the CD sleeve for Definitely Maybe. I had hair down to my belt and a beard that was 3 inches off my face. I shaved the beard. I went into the hair salon to the lady who used to always cut my hair. And I pointed at a picture of Noel Gallagher on the inside cover of Definitely Maybe. And I said, I want this.
Give me the Gallagher.
Give me the Gallagher. So there you go. They are very much influenced, good and bad, in my life. So
Ken, I love hearing this because you're articulating well some of what the attraction was for me to Guns N' Roses. Of everybody in that era was posing in their lyrics, were posing about what bad boy they were, and then you'd hear like, yeah, no, Axl jumped in the crowd and punched a photographer and ruined the entire concert. They're for real. It's not good, but it's authentic. It's real. And wanting to be dazzled by this thing that I am not and probably don't want to be, but what if and all that. It's so powerful. So I so relate to that. But Oasis is solidly in the pocket of the era of music I tuned out on. Ken, I can't name an Oasis song.
That's okay.
I'm sure I know them, but I don't. What? Pretend I'm 80 years older than you. What's one of those Oasis boys' big hits?
You want Wonderwall, Don't Go Away, Live Forever. I think one of the best radio singles of all time. Cast No Shadow, if you want some sad emo boy emotion. So
okay, I know Wonderwall. I just didn't know that what is Oasis.
Oh,
Champagne Supernova. Champagne
oh
Supernova.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, definitely made.
I got some Googling to do.
Cigarettes, some of the best B-sides, the Master Plan, Acquiesce, they're all B-sides and singles, not even on albums. Oh, I could go on.
Amazing.
Yeah. So there you go. Jen, were you drinking pints down at the pub listening to Oasis?
No, but I do like it. And I hear their music often at karaoke bars.
Yes.
Because they are like, you can't help but sing along. And I was always fascinated with how the brothers they would brawl. Like they were so, like you're saying, authentically rock stars. And there's something admirable about that. They just own their truth.
They own their truth. And the hate is authentic. They still don't talk after all these years after the band broke up. It's a fabled reunion that people want to happen, but both of them say, F no, not with that guy. So
Wow.
So that's my number 4, Manfred over Oasis. But Jen, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Taylor. No, I'm just kidding. Taylor Swift is a very great artist. My number 4 is Jay-Z.
Nice.
He is one of the greatest, most influential hip hop artists of all time. Every album is great. Every album has a hit, but the one that I listen to from start to finish is the Black Album. It's very autobiographical, and he's a really great storyteller and lyricist. One of my favorite lyrics of his is he says, I get my by any means on whenever there's a drought. Get your umbrellas out because that's when I brainstorm. I love it. I think about that a lot. But yeah, and then the best part about him is that you can go deep. I listen to him all the time, but then I have such wonderful memories of back in the day when I was in the club and his songs would come on and we would just go crazy. It was just so much fun. So I have so many wonderful old memories with his music as well as new ones now.
Love that. This is a great choice. This is why Jed's here. My relationship with Jay-Z is he's an icon and a titan, and I just acknowledge it. Whether or not I fully know everything about his music or career, you can't escape him. You can't escape his presence. And I mean that in a great way. He's truly one of the biggest artists of our time. So I love that this choice is here. Joseph, you're going to surprise me and say you own all of his albums. I know it.
I do not own all of his albums. I know a few Jay-Z songs and I love them. And I love the contributions he's made to the history of memes as well. With the
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like when I was thinking about him, I'm like, I right now I picture him with his daughter Blue Ivy, and she's like kind of embarrassed by her dad, like at some basketball game. It was such a funny clip to see. I'm like, he's Jay-Z, but he's a dad, and he is also husband to Beyonce, one of the greatest pop stars, R&B musicians of all time, right? So, who he is now is, I think of him as a businessman and a father and a husband.
Yeah. Yeah. 99 Problems is one that somebody put on a mixtape for me that I listened to a ton. That's probably my main Jay-Z connection is the song 99 Problems.
Yeah, you in the world, right? I love that. I love that. Yeah, you said the business side of it, Jen. That's one of the things I absolutely love. Just absolutely owning everything about his career, his art, and those around him. The influence. He is a titan for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's only our fourth choices. We are up to number 3. And I'll start this round here. My number 3 choice for favorite artist, musician, band is a solo artist. I actually recently talked about her, but now it's a chance for me to go deep into the music and the influence of Liz Phair. Liz Phair has been my favorite since I discovered her in 1994. Now, she broke onto the scene in 93, was doing kind of her own independent thing out of college in the Chicago area in 91, 92. Her girly sound tapes kind of broke her. And Exile on Gavel comes out in 93, which is, it's always been alleged, but it is in truth a song-for-song response to Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street, but it's also so much more. It was her telling the story of Exile on Guyville, was her in the Chicago independent music scene at that time. Smashing Pumpkins, Urge Overkill, a lot of those bands. And she kind of was everywhere if you were starting to follow music at that time, famously on a Rolling Stone cover, nothing more than a slip. And that was kind of the image that got put out as the music industry does. She also had kind of a famous / infamous song called Flower. I don't recommend you listen to that with the volume loud for other people around you to hear unless you know what's coming. And so that you get pigeonholed in that. And she was an indie post-punk darling and all that kind of good stuff. But this is when I was coming out of high school, discovering a lot of different kind of music. And her second album, Whip Smart, I remember the night I was watching 120 Minutes on MTV. Matt Pinfield pitched it to this new song from Liz Phair, the title track, Whip Smart, in the video. And I just was mesmerized from day one. There's something, though, it's hard to describe. And I try to say it as careful as I can. As a quiet, lonely, sad, heart on his sleeve kind of guy in the mid-90s coming out of high school, which is some of the stuff we actually recently talked about on an OtherCenter stuff, Joseph. I didn't fully understand who I was pursuing, who being women, right? Which is my choice. I didn't understand it. And it's so easily, especially as a white straight male in the suburbs, listen to this music. You have this image of this pop post-punk darling chanteuse in a silk dress on a Rolling Stone cover, and that's your image. I swear to you, Liz Phair taught me about women before I knew, right? And I'm not perfect, still not perfect, but I really, really believe that listening to her music, listening to her perspective, listening to what she was saying helped me. It helped take her off that cover of a magazine and become something real, become something honest, including the sexiness, the sexuality, her trying to own it and her desires, including the foibles, the sadness, the depression, all those things she dealt with. And even when she wrote from a character, sometimes it was herself, the blood on the tracks was hers, and sometimes it was more of a character. It was easy to get mesmerized by it. It was easy to kind of be the rock dude flirting with her at a party virtually. And I actually wrote about this in the early 2000s, where a lot of rock critics kind of felt, she was their, secret girlfriend, and they were drinking out of the red cups at the party. And when she didn't deliver on that all the time, they started to attack her. You're not just sexy Liz. When you're not La Liz, you failed. And her music, even when she tried to go a little bit more pop, which was kind of infamously derided by her fan base and the music industry in the early 2000s, she was writing about things. Her album, which just this week turned 25 years old, White Chocolate Space Egg, dealt with her, at the time, marriage, at the time, a baby on the way. The next album dealt with divorce, dealt with dating while divorced. And she was in her mid-30s. My previous relationship was with a woman who was recently divorced with a young son in her mid-30s. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't understand that. And again, never perfect, never had the full perspective on it. But Liz Phair had an entire album about that. And I could listen to it and go, I understand it more than I ever possibly could. And I need to understand it more and communicate in a real way. So I'm not saying music is the end of your education on this stuff. That's why I love her music so much, and seen her perform many times. I'm going to see her 30th anniversary concert for Exxon in November. It was more than just a rock star. She had Supernova come out, and it's got some lyrics that make you blush, and it's a rock and roll tune. But she was real in a time where women in rock weren't always allowed to be real. Some broke through. Some always through the history of rock were able to do it. But she was that version for the mid-90s. And it was tremendously valuable to me. And I'll always be thankful, as I still enjoy her music, but always be thankful for that education that I wasn't getting. There's a great song lyric she has about drawing them in like a moth to the flame. And I always kind of thought that was her music. She's going to draw you in with some rock, draw you in with some sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But if you're ready and you're open to it, you're going to learn some things. And that's the legacy of Liz Phair's music for me.
That is great. That is a great verbal essay, Ken. And I think bringing up something really powerful of why we gravitate toward specific musicians is sometimes because they're exactly what we need at a point in our life, but that the power of music, the power of art is connection and communication.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's like what we've been talking about with some of like the older naughty bands or naughty lyricists, who can express some of the things that maybe you can't in day-to-day life of anger and frustration. But also I love what you're saying, that Liz Phair started, that's what draws you to the moth to the flame of the anger and the explosion, but you got so much deeper than that to the reality and the perspective that you didn't have access to otherwise. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, if you're open to the themes, and they're there for you to explore. So that's that. Jen, I don't know if you have any relationship with Liz Phair and her music, but let me know.
Yeah, she was so cool. And she was incredibly sexy, which really I found intimidating as a young girl. And so what ended up happening was I kind of was drawn more towards like the train wreck of Courtney Love and Hole, or Ani DeFranco, those kind of artists who
I love Ani DeFranco.
Right. Very, very, very different. But I mean, and it's one of those things where I was like, I think I'd like to listen to Liz Phair's music now. I think I probably would enjoy it a lot more. But I just remember that Rolling Stone cover. I was like, oh, she's so perfect. And she was just so cool. And I was not. And so I just did not really, I didn't feel like I could, like either I could appreciate her or I was worthy of appreciating her music. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was part of the problem. It's a rock and roll machine. That churned up in a bit, and that became the image. There's a great song. I could go on for I'll stop, but there's a great song later on in her career about, I take the trash out too. Like, what am I to you type of thing. So, love that. So there you go, Jen. I'll make you a mix CD. I'm on it. Don't worry. I'll make some. I got
it. Yeah, well, give that one to me as well, because I am not super familiar with Liz Phair. She's definitely in the era where I stopped paying attention, and definitely regret that.
I get it. That's my number 3. Jen, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Aretha Franklin. A different route. There are so many reasons why Aretha Franklin is known as the Queen of Soul. Her vocal range is incredible. But when you watch her when she would perform live, it was so effortless. She literally had an instrument inside her body that just was like, I mean, you see a lot of artists trying to replicate that nowadays, and they look like they're straining, or they are kind of straining, and then they develop like, nodules and notes on their vocal cords. She just had it. And one of my favorite songs of hers is Sweet, Sweet Baby, Since You've Been Gone. It's an emotional song, like many of her songs, very emotional, but it's also like kind of a bop. So it's just kind of fun to groove to. This Is a House That Jack Built is another favorite, because it shows how she's able to convey anger and hurt and pain while still maintaining strength and power. That's like how her voice is, right? It's so great. It feels like an anthem, and so many of her songs feel like anthems. She's just such a true powerhouse. And being an incredible singer is one thing. There's a lot of incredible singers, but what made her so unique was that she did sing from her gut in such an emotional place that made her feel so relatable, right? And that's why people continue to listen to her music.
You're saying it is voice as an instrument, right? And voice statement. She's powerful beyond just her music, indeed. The queen for a reason. On my oldies station I work at, where I don't really have a lot of choice in what gets played, I love when a good Aretha Franklin song shows up. It's so fun to talk about.
Yeah. I think I probably at a very young age became aware of Aretha Franklin from watching the Blues Brothers in a hotel room.
Oh, right.
And getting in trouble because my brother and I got too excited and were bouncing up and down on the bed from all of that music and all of that comedy. But I love what you're saying about Aretha Franklin. And I think it's kind of fascinating that there's been tradition in, some, not all, but some Western music that it is about the perfection of the note. Can you sing this perfectly, consistently, night after night? And this, explosion throughout the 20th century of artists with amazing instruments who can put so much emotion, and no one else can sing a song the same way Aretha Franklin can. They can hit the exact same note and hold it for the same duration, but it is still not the same because it's truly art.
There's a hilarious clip that I saw just this past week where I forget, all these female vocalists were, on stage with her. Whitney Houston is there, phenomenal vocalist. And Aretha goes over after the performance and she just kind of like messes with Whitney Houston's hair. Like, it's such a power move. Like, and Whitney Houston didn't even bat an eye. She was like, yeah, because Aretha is the queen, right? So it's so funny. It's such a funny video.
Now, again, we're talking about big names, and it's far too easy to just look at a legend and forget why they became legends. And she's one of those that you should not forget. And she's got a powerful story too. So great choice, Joseph. A lot of pressure on you here for your number 3.
Well, without discussing, we're very aligned in women powerhouses because my number 3 is Lady Gaga.
Great choice.
Yeah, and Ken, maybe she'll pop up on your list as well.
No, she's the one I've said. I was like, I can't. I didn't feel right including yet, but I'm happy to discuss it. So you made a great choice.
Oh, good. Yeah, there's so much about Lady Gaga that is powerful, and that different people, particularly women, can speak to their different experience of what her music has meant, unlocked, what they've heard. I'm sure some Liz Phair-like journeys where they are drawn in by the kind of art house spectacle, particularly of Lady Gaga's earlier career, and then found so much truth and freedom of expression in her lyrics and in her music and all that. For me, my journey with Lady Gaga was I was out of touch with pop music, and I think probably kind of having the beginnings of a young middle-aged crisis, where I was still doing a lot of things that in theory should make me feel real lively, of performing and hanging out with friends, but I was just feeling stagnant, and I didn't really realize it at the time. But I just, like, as I'm driving around from rehearsal to rehearsal and day job to day job in the summer of 2010, it's just like I'm just gonna listen to the modern pop station and see what's there for me, and started hearing Bad Romance and Poker Face and Alejandro, because the Fame Monster had just come out, and just like when I was a kid, it was like, wait, all of those songs are the same person? That's Lady Gaga? I gotta check out some albums. And so for my introduction to her, those first couple albums in particular, the Fame and then the Fame Monster, they are just so much about being alive, about wanting to be out at the club with friends, and about the good and the bad of romance, but the freedom and the need to dance, and that was just like exactly what I needed to hear to just sort of like feel alive. So I think that was really my introduction to her, and then I got the albums, then understood a little bit more, like, she is from this performance art art house background, which spoke to me, having a visual art degree and being a theater artist. A little bit of a different approach. She wasn't like, like we were talking about with Guns N' Roses and Oasis, this like dangerous, far away figure. She was like, one of my friends could become Lady Gaga. So made her both like this incredible rock star, but also like strangely a little bit more accessible, that like I understood where the explosion came from and grew from. And then as she started putting out more albums, I saw in her this spirit that was similar to me, to other artists I like David Bowie, of the I'm going to reinvent myself. I have to reinvent myself. Very similar to David Bowie. But then I started realizing like, part of the reason I may be gravitating to Lady Gaga is she is this very strong, fierce, but also vulnerable personality who also happens to be an Italian New Yorker, who is not going to get down, really excited to evolve and change. And it's like, she's like a descendant of Sinatra and Tony Bennett. She's like their spirit if they were born today. And then like a week later, she announced that she was doing the albums with Tony Bennett, because Tony Bennett had called her up and was like, your pop stuff is great, but I hear your pipes. You can do the oldies, Stephanie. And she creates this partnership with him, which was one of the reasons that I become extra fascinated with her, beyond the initial attraction to the explosion of life, which was this sort of like, there are amazing pop singers who have kind of that story of, from Elvis all the way to very modern people, where their image is this strong, powerful thing, but there are people in their lives who are like controlling them and locking them down. And like that Lady Gaga to me had this connection to Sinatra of like, she's going to do what she wants to do. And, she's been public about, she has had problems and people trying to control her and tragedies and all these things. So I'm not saying she's like some perfect superhero, but to me, there's something powerful about artists who, they are great artists, but maybe there's a team that kind of shepherds them over here to do this kind of album. Now do this kind of album. And I just sensed so much of Lady Gaga was such a like, I am going to do what I want to do and what I need to do. And it's not just my music. I am a personality who is going to affect the world in multiple ways. So I think it's partially the music, but it's partially just like the size of her influence, because she's a person who's living her life out loud, is an artist that is affecting so much of culture.
Power from a 5'2" frame, indeed. I have a lot to say. I'll shorten up, but Jen, I want to slide you in here on this choice from Joseph.
It's great choice. It's interesting because when she first burst onto the scene, she reminded me of Madonna a lot. Obviously their backgrounds, right? And there was a time where she was doing like the meat dress and there's all these big things, and I was just like, and then like you said, I learned that she's a performance artist, really, and I began to appreciate her. And then when I saw her with Tony Bennett and I heard her voice, and it was so incredible and perfect pitch, I was like, oh my gosh, in addition to being this incredible performance artist, she's also this talented singer. And also the reverence that she had for Tony Bennett. And like, she was just, even Liza Minnelli, I think I saw a clip of her on stage being just so sweet to that older generation. I was like, wow. And then now with her as an actor and really diving deep and wanting to give the best performance possible, I really liked her in House of Gucci. So I just have so much respect for her. I love her. Great choice.
Yeah, she's one of the ones too. If you watch some clips of her interviews, I'd vote for her. Like, she just has. She explains things. Quickly, my journey is mirrored a little bit with yours, Jen. Where I remember 2009, 2010, and all that stuff, and the dresses and this and that, and it's easy just to kind of stop at that, right? And stop at that gate and just go, I don't know what's going on here, and write it off. And I remember my boss at the time, I'm working in the old public safety job, and my boss, it was this real tough, grizzled, retired LAPD lieutenant, shows up to work one day singing Poker Face. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, that's a great tune. And I was like, I can like that. Like, I had that kind of like, I can like that. But she's just this throwaway pop princess, right? And some of those things exist. It's not necessarily the artist; it's the industry that churns them out. So that happens. But it was a process to me where, music's catchy because it's designed. It is catchy. It's not designed to be. It is catchy. She's talented in that regard. But then I remember seeing her on SNL, and she was kind of sitting down at a piano, and I was like, oh, that person's really good at that. Like, yeah, okay. And that move, but still there's all the stuff around it. And I highly recommend, if no one's seen the doc, 5'2", it's a very interesting point of her career. It's a very great doc. It's a very fly in the wall doc. It is a kind of a change in her career. I mean, she's just starting to shoot a quote movie with Bradley Cooper. Right? He wants a movie. And so what we know her now is kind of, dare I say it, because it's the way pop culture moves, an elder stateswoman of pop culture. The way,
yeah.
But it's a fascinating time. And you talk about the dress thing, and I still think there was a part of me that didn't understand and had to reconcile my thoughts on that from 2009 and 2010 to the present day. And I saw this doc a little bit after it came out, 2018 range. And there's a great sequence where she kind of talks about, they want the red carpet. I'm going to give them my version of it. I'm going to control who I am, control my sexuality, control everything about me. It's art. It's a story. And then there's this fascinating, almost scary, intimidating sequence of supercuts of her leaving buildings and the swarm of fans around her and her dresses, her outfit, all that kind of stuff. And it blew me away. I got it. I'm a Beatles fan, as you all find out soon enough already. And wow, that's something different. And to maintain her agency and maintain her art and her purpose and what she wants to put out there through this, with thousands of people screaming her name. The outfits suddenly had reason that were always there, of course, but I finally got it. And that's where I really did the big switch, where I was like, there's something going on here that I just had overlooked. And her and Bowie right now are probably the two big influences on me in terms of art and what I want to do. Every night I drive to a comedy show, I am listening to Gaga. Rebel shows up, but Edge of Glory, Diamond Heart, one of my favorite songs, Bad Romance, I don't care if they're the big hits. I'm singing it at the top of my lung as I go to a comedy club, because that's the mood I want to be in, a true artist. Yeah. Great choice. Thank you for letting me sneak it in there on my list.
I might be sneaking in on one of yours as well. So yeah, I just want to say quickly about the early her early stage life world presence that was so much costumes. That was one of the things. Like I felt like, is it okay for me, an older person, to like newer music? And all the feedback I got when I people younger than me would be, they'd say Alejandro, and I would go like, I love Alejandro. They're like, what? But in a welcoming way. And so that felt good. But then it was also kind of empowering to me when I talked to other people my age, particularly men. I had the opposite experience from you, Ken. I had somebody say to me like, you like Lady Gaga? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that meat dress. Like, yeah, it's art and it's expression. It's an idea. It's meant to be provocative and to talk about. And and he was like, she scares me. I don't know what her face looks like. And in a way that felt even more like, even though at that time she was the thing, I felt like in a club, because I was okay with this thing that was frightening other people.
Yeah. Love that. Oh, that's a great choice. That's your number. We got all of our number threes in. Oh my gosh, we're having fun. But we have a couple choices left. We're going to take a quick break here on Life Rank. We hope you're enjoying this conversation. Come back for our favorite bands, artists, musicians as we race towards the top of our Life Rank list. Stick around. Welcome back to the show. We are here in OtherCenter. I'm Ken Napzok with Joseph Scrimshaw, Jennifer Landa in the virtual studio. We are talking about our favorite bands, artists, and musicians. As you can tell, we have a lot to say, which probably means it's not the last time we talk about music or even these artists. But we've got to get to some of the big choices here. And Jen, we're going to begin with your number two.
Number two is Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a time when I was really obsessed with classic rock, and it all started with Led Zeppelin. When I was 13 years old, I had just started high school, and this kind of group of friends and this boy that I began to date, They introduced me to Led Zeppelin. And so there's a lot of nostalgia there, but it's a band that I've continued to listen to for all these years later. Every album has a song that I love, but my favorite album of theirs is Houses of the Holy, because I can just let the whole album play. And each song on that album, it takes you on a journey. There's so many different songs that you can play depending on your mood. Over the Hills and Far Away. I love blasting when I'm on a road trip. The Ocean is a fun one if you're at home and you just are, I don't know, doing something, cleaning the house. And of course, one of my favorite things when I used to listen to the radio, and Ken, maybe you've done this, is when they play Heartbreaker on the radio and then you follow it up with Living Loving Maid next. It's just like this thing. Yes, they're playing it back to back. Like I love them. And I love that Robert Plant is still performing. Gosh, it's just such a great band.
Yeah. When, what age did you really discover them, Jen?
Like 13.
13, 14. That's a great,
Yeah.
It's kind of
they were everything.
This is a great choice, Jen. Yeah, I have a good relationship with Led Zeppelin. I never was drawn into them as much, but I always forget how much their influence is there and how much I enjoy it. So occasionally on Pop Rocket Radio, when I do my radio show, someone will request Led Zeppelin. I'll be like, some Zeppelin on. Then I always I do this. Oh, right. That's right. Glenn Page. They kind of knew what they were doing there. Fascinating there. That doc I always talk about in the book, 1971. It's a fascinating time for them because they are not the Led Zeppelin that we would come to know, but they still were in a wonderful way. They showed up a powerhouse. So I love that choice. And yeah, speaking for the rock and roll DJ man, the other thing too, first of all, I love that they're Tolkien nerds. But I used to love playing Led Zeppelin songs because it would allow me to go to the nearby Jack in the Box and get food. All right, we got
Stairway to Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
Nice.
You got 7 minutes. Oh, except for We Would Be Fine. We couldn't play Stairway on our radio station. We'd be fined $95.30 if our program director caught us.
No way.
Just because of the massive overplaying of it?
Yeah. It was that kind of like in the Wayne's World joke of, hey, no Stairway. Yeah, it was. But all the other songs were on there. So anyways.
It is a band slightly injured by the mass success of that one song, which is not Led Zeppelin's on my runners up list, so this is great. This is so fun to hear these surprises from Jen. I discovered them around 13 or 14 years old as well. Like my dad had some classic records album, but he was more of a Beatles guy, and Led Zeppelin was, whoa man, that was all different because it kind of related to the music. They were creeping more into being a bridge toward heavy metal. With the ripping guitar solos. And then when I started drumming and trying to play along with the tracks, like I started drumming, like I can figure out how to play along to most Beatles songs. I cannot figure out yet how to play along with Bonham.
Yeah.
John Bonham Carter he was incredible. Yeah.
Moby Dick on so much love for that.
Wonderful stuff. We've got ourselves a great mixtape and CD format right here, right now. We'll go to your number 2, Joseph.
Well, this one will be a little bit shorter because so far we've all been doing some pretty well-known groups and individuals. I had to include this because it's just true, and they're a small indie band from Canada that does really niche music. But if you look at my iTunes history, there is absolutely no doubt that they're one of my favorites. I think I've mentioned them once or twice on ForceCenter. It's a band called Darkest of the Hillside Thickets. And they are just a kind of straightforward, kind of classic, nice and bassy, a lot of drums, guitar solos, rock and roll band. But they formed to do songs about the cosmic horror oeuvre of H.P. Lovecraft. So it's this really weird niche. And I started listening to them because I'd go over to my good friend's house in Minneapolis, and all of us were Lovecraft nerds, and we would play Lovecraft board games, like combat board games, where we would stay up late drinking too much beer and trying to frankly murder one another in shacks. and he would crank this music, and it was like you kind of if you think of the most obscure thing you like, and then you realize there's a whole band about it. Not that Lovecraft is that obscure in the grand scheme of things, but the closest I ever got to this was talking about Led Zeppelin, reading The Hobbit and listening to Led Zeppelin, and it literally happened when I was 14, reading The Hobbit, and like, did he just say Gollum? Is that okay? Is that allowed? Because Guns N' Roses weren't like singing about whatever nerd thing I was reading. So that was the initial draw, and it was party music that I listened to at my friend's house where we partied by playing board games too late. And then I just had one of those moments of like, I can just buy that music. That's allowed.
Yeah.
And so I love the music. It's dark and weird and funny because it does kind of play on the jokes of it. Takes some of the super dark, scary things and then just kind of turns them into a little bit of jokes by putting them into the pop culture rock sphere. And then I really started gravitating toward it because, Ken, you and I have talked about this recently. There was a shift for rock and roll where, it's not on pop radio as much. And if you want to do the work, you can still find, rock and roll that is bass, guitar, and drums and a vocalist with great weird range. But I wasn't finding that. And I realized I'm listening to Darkest of the Hillside Thickets partially because of the cosmic horror fun, but also because just like I've been finding in my life a really solid, to me, classic rock and roll band, and they're absolutely that too. So I think people who love rock would be, it would be a little bit of like maybe a Nirvana experience where like, this is great. I'm feeling a lot of things. I don't know what these lyrics mean, but this is great. And the name Darkest of the Hillside Thickets comes from a Lovecraft story, The Tomb, that says, I will tell only of the lone tomb in the darkest of the hillside thickets. And I've never got to see them live, but they perform wearing like big bonkers Spinal Tap like suits of cosmic horror monsters, and just a great sense of there's an energy of Beastie Boys there too, of like let's this music is good, we take it seriously, but let's have fun with this. So that's my number 2, Darkest of the Hillside Thickets.
I love that name, Darkest of the Hillside Thickets. I just wrote down. I'm going to look them up. It's right up there with "And You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead."
Right?
Love that. I'm completely unfamiliar. I think I've heard you mention it before. Going to take a dive in. Fascinating stuff. Jen, will you surprise us and say it's your number 1 choice? Or no?
I have never heard of this band, and I was just looking it up. It looks fascinating. I can't wait to listen to it after we record. I want to hear it now.
Yeah, I was not trying to pull one of these. Like, actually, one of my favorites is one you've never heard of. I don't like that. Was not trying to pull that. It's just honest.
It's hard not to. Believe me, I want you all to hear Jesse Peo and Pom Poms. All right? Go look for it. You want some retro rock. Yeah, I know the urge, but no, I think this is a great choice and very true to your experience. This is wonderful here. We're going to go to my number 2 choice. And I realize the way I kind of run things, I think I'm going to end up going back to back here. We'll see, because I want to end with Jen here at the number 1 choice. But my number 2 choice, absolutely one of the biggest bands in the world. They always elicit some kind of reaction, sometimes negative, and I get it. I actually get it. They all give you a free album on your iTunes, and you hated them for it, and I understood because it also wasn't enough. I have to go with U2 as my number 2 choice. And here's why. Here's why it's personal. Absolutely one of the biggest bands in the world. Influence, rock stars. Talk about rock stars being rock stars, especially when they come back in 91. Bono says in 89, we're going to go away and dream it all up again. And this is what they come back as. Mephisto and The Fly and all the stuff. Totally get it. Totally get it if it's not your thing. I love the pop album. I think it's smirched unfairly at times, but here's why. And they were obviously big when I was in radio. The friend of mine at the station who was actually kind of romantically with at the time, huge U2 fan, and I got it and I loved it, and their songs were great. But beyond that, I needed them. And when they really hit me, not discovered, when they hit me in the early 2000s, I was in such a depressive state. I was such in a disillusioned with the church period of my life, which has only grown. But my disillusionment wasn't with God or the concept of God or my spirituality. That wasn't the problem. It was the building I went into, and I had this weird war going on in my soul. But I needed some help. I was depressed, man. 2003, I tried to jump off a building. 2004, put a gun to my head, and I just was in the gutter. And that's when I really connected with the love, desire, and crisis of faith of their music. And that's where it really hit me. And there's a specific moment. I hate to get so specific here that it might offend someone. I used to attend a big super church in LA in the early 2000s. Good pastor, I think, Pastor Dudley Rutherford, I thought was well-intentioned. I haven't been around there for years. So no, not just besmirching that church, Shepherd of the Hills. It's only grown. It's giant now. It's like almost a whole city up there in Porter Ranch, California. But I went there and I wasn't feeling anything, and I was feeling lower and lower. And again, it's complicated reasons. And there was a guest pastor, and he was a fire and brimstone guy. And I was like, this wasn't for me. I got to go. This isn't speaking to me. And I think this is destructive. And I was really sitting there listening the whole time. And at the end of it, he brings out Psalm 40, which is this great psalm for the book of Psalms. And he reads it, and it's my favorite psalm. The reason it's my favorite psalm is U2 had a song called 40 that they closed every concert at in the 80s when they were the biggest band in the world at the time. And the pastor reads this, and he had just given this sermon in which we got to go out and destroy and fight the world, and we got to be bulldogs. And it wasn't my thing, and I felt it was wrong, and I just felt so distant and so cold. And he reads the Psalm 40 thing, and he goes, this is a great psalm. I am amazed that no one has ever turned this into a song. And I almost got up and left right then. Not because I'm a U2 fan, I need to defend the band, but I was like, you're not feeding my soul. That band is. Because this song, Bono closed, and yes, he's Bono, I get it, and a lot of people like it, but he closed every show in the 80s on his knees singing hallelujah to this song. And that probably affected more people than you ever will. And I never went back. Never went back. That was my last time in that church. And this band saved my life, as well as George Harrison's music, who could, by himself could be on the list. And so that's why I love them. All the other stuff, and and I was taught not to like them because they were, quote, a Christian band that went secular, which isn't 100% true. But if you listen to their story, especially on that Letterman interview they have, where Bono and the Edge go back to Ireland, that you get into where that came from. And Irish Catholicism is, it's a big umbrella. That wasn't exactly true, but I was told that as a kid. You can't like them. They turned their back on the church, and maybe there was a good reason. So anyways, that's why I liked them. We can get into all the other stuff, or you can talk about the music, but that's why I was greatly influenced. And in fact, I say saved by the band in the early 2000s.
Wow. That's really powerful.
Yeah. I think a tribute to how powerful music can be, obviously. But also I understand we've only had drive-by conversations about U2, and I have a couple songs of theirs that I like, but I had friends who loved them, and I tried to get into them, and I do have strong opinions about the iTunes thing. I think I wrote an essay about it at the time for a friend's kind of online journal about I think people felt like there's so much in our lives that we're losing control of, and now you can't even control your personal music space without Bono popping up and going, take it whether you like it or not. Which was, I don't think from their perspective, the spirit of it. It's really wonderful with the ups and downs I've had with U2 to understand fully why they mean so much to you.
Yeah. And I still haven't, he just put out that book, about 40 songs or whatever it is, and he does take some ownership for that finally a little bit, saying that was me, and the rest of the band was a little unhappy with him for it. It's fascinating pop culture history indeed, and I don't think you're wrong, because I don't listen to that album.
But I feel like that with like a lot of these big names we're talking about, not all of them, but particularly the ones that we're sort of lauding because they are creative and expressive of themselves and try big things, that they all take swings that either like, that album didn't quite work, or wow, they pissed a lot of people off. But that's a part of the power of being willing to try things,
Indeed. Jen, any thoughts there? Did you throw your iPhone into the water?
No, I love U2. Love U2. And it's really funny because I was listening to have you guys seen Sing 2, the movie Sing 2? Sorry, I'm going to mention something, a drug company, but I have to for this story. And well, gosh, I can't even think of the name of the song. Only to Be With You, that one. So the lion in the movie starts singing that, and I'm like, wow, that really sounds like Bono, and I'm trying to tell my kids, I'm like, that sounds like the artist, because they don't understand that this music that they're playing in this movie existed outside of this movie. And I was waiting for the end credits, and sure enough, Bono is in Sing 2. And I was like, good for him. Good for him that he played this shy lion who didn't want to perform. I love it. I love it. He does a duet with Halsey at the end, who is a hedgehog, porcupine. I can't remember.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. My number 2 choice. And also you want to, I can't stop, but you plug in other bands. Nepo babies are a thing. I get it. His son, Elijah Houston, has a great band called Inhaler. And you might want to try to not like it because of that connection. They're really good. They're really good. So check it out. Check out Inhaler. All right. So now we're out to our number 1 choices. And as I often do here, I like to lead off the number 1 choices so the other folks on the show can close it out. But I realize that kind of accidentally puts me back to back. So I apologize. But also will force me to be quicker because I've spent 30 years talking about this band, and who hasn't? There's a comic named Howard Kramer. I don't know what he's up to now or the material he does, so don't hold me to that. But he had a great bit I used to always see in the 2000s where he'd be like, oh, great, yeah, you got a Beatles shirt on? Awesome. I got a shirt that says food. Like, we get it. You like the Beatles. But I'm a big Beatles fan, and I know that's shared here as well. And the reason I'm going to choose to discuss them, and I was trying to justify this, because I almost was like, should I just put them into like a life-ranked Hall of Fame and talk about other things? So we can go to the music, we can go to the accomplishments, we can go, you can watch Peter Jackson's doc if you want. I do. I just put it on sometimes in the background. There's all these things to talk about, but I wanted to kind of make it personal. And again, this is a shared, unique journey, something that I experienced by myself that turns out everyone else did. They are an influence on me and so many people for like how to do this, how to start, the origin stories, change, growth, risks, infighting, implosions, bad business, good business, how to dress, how to change your hair. All these things we're going to talk about. They're not necessarily always the first in this stuff, but it's what I study. And so there's so many things in my life where I'm like, I've entered my summer of 68 phase with the Beatles. I used to grow a beard and call it, this is my 70 McCartney, or this is my 71 Harrison, or it's my 65 Ringo. Like everything, even down to how I dressed or how I looked, or even how I felt. I kind of felt anytime you come out with, for them, a new album, but anytime you kind of reemerge, you're talking about Lady Gaga, reemerging, David Bowie changing, you should have a different look, different feel. I kind of like, and it took me until late in life to kind of get to this point. I kind of like that you could look at them and go, that's them in that year, that's them in this year and that year, and it's a short amount of time. They did so much. And that's one of the things people talk about just in terms of the dry history of it all. It's so much in a short amount of time. A lot of bands did, by the way. It was very common. 3 albums a year, no problem. You're slacking. Now it's a little different. That's just the business of it all. But that's the thing that I love. I want to focus on and not necessarily love the most, because I love them for so many different reasons. Yes, the music. Yes, it got me through the high school days, and I felt I was joining a club, right? That even my dad, we don't talk as much, but even he was like, oh yeah, when I was in the Navy, I had reel-to-reels of Sgt. Pepper that I was passing around the ship. Like all that stuff is there. It was truly a connection, but that's what I love. It's this weird template. It's like them and Spinal Tap, or how you do bands or how you do art, the rise, the fall, the comeback, this and that, and all those things. So that's why I choose to list the Beatles as my number 1. I'll say this. I don't listen to them as much anymore because they're just so part of my DNA and wiring. I don't feel I need to. I go seek other bands out, but that's kind of the power of them. They're always going to be there. They are a click away, and that's all I need. So the Beatles are my number 1 choice.
Oh, that is great. The Beatles were a huge influence to me, like when I needed them early in life, and I would love to revisit them more. John Lennon in particular, and just sort of the idea that you could be artistic and weird and be yourself. And I know this kind of become a cliche every time somebody passes away. People on social media be like, thanks for teaching me it's okay to be weird. But it's become a cliche because so many people experience it with different artists. But I did not like having glasses, and I saw John Lennon with his gold wire circular glasses, and my glasses were broken, and my parents liked the Beatles and weren't afraid of me being me challenging them yet, because they were used to the Beatles as a safe challenge because they were their challenge to their parents.
Yeah.
So they didn't recognize it that I was going to be challenging them in a bit. And they're like, sure, we'll get you some John Lennon glasses. And it made me feel like I can start to be myself, in public. And I went on a field trip in 8th grade, like a 3-day thing to like this environmental retreat. And the cassettes I brought with me, I could only bring 3, and it's my first music ranked. Was bringing those 3 cassettes, and it was Appetite for Destruction, Led Zeppelin 2, and Sgt. Pepper's. So huge part of my life early in life, and I think it'd be really fun to maybe talk some more Beatles as I spend some time kind of rediscovering them.
There you go. Love that. Jen, your thoughts on the Beatles here?
Oh my gosh. For me, they were an example of reinvention, because when I knew them as a kid, they were these teeny bopper, rock and rollers on the Ed Sullivan Show. So then when I was in high school, I was introduced to the White Album, and I'll never forget, I was at a friend's house where he was kind of having like a small get together. His parents weren't home. For some reason, they didn't have a lot of lights on, and he lived at a house in the hills. And so I could look off into the distance, and he put on the White Album. And I was like, wow, this is the Beatles? This doesn't sound like what I thought. Yeah. And when Helter Skelter came on, I was like, oh, isn't that the song? There's the Charles Manson. Like, there was a sense of danger that I don't know. Like, and then being in that house in the hills, like suddenly got a little freaked out.
Yeah.
But just
I
loved learning about their new side of their music. So just White Album, Sgt. Pepper, all of those. So good.
Yeah, the commentary of Happiness is a Warm Gun. That was like, I think one of the first things I understood is political commentary, to the point where like I would go around and tell other kids at school, like the Beatles, but John Lennon in particular, a pacifist. And like I almost got in a physical fight because another kid didn't believe me that John Lennon was a pacifist.
Yes, indeed. I remember young junior high going singing Taxman and going, this is talking about the high tax rates in England. But that's my number one choice. Joseph, we're going to go with your number one. What is your number one?
My number one will not surprise anyone at this point. It is Francis Albert Sinatra. I will try to contain myself, but I think it's great that we're talking a lot about our introduction. So, growing up when we did in the 80s, Sinatra was still touring. He was still a presence. This happened with a lot of the entertainers in his era, where we as kids just sort of absorbed the sort of the twilight of the gods, these people kind of at the end of their era, as they were trying to figure out how to stay true to themselves, but also embrace the present, maybe. So I knew Sinatra from just Johnny Carson would make jokes about him. I knew he was real important. I knew he was old Blue Eyes. I knew both Joe Piscopo, and then Phil Hartman did jokes, and Phil Hartman was real funny and portrayed him as, frankly, like, your inappropriate grandfather who says deeply inappropriate things. And I thought it was so funny. And one of my initial introductions to Frank Sinatra was like repeating Phil Hartman jokes.
Same.
That's how he lived in my imagination, of this crusty old guy that's even older than the Beatles. How is that possible? Who is totally locked into a different time and a different era, and he's always wearing that tux like a fool, and why? And then I met some friends who were artsy, and we did some like kind of early shows together, and they like Sinatra, and I picked up Strangers in the Night because I thought the doobie doobie doo he does at the end was really funny. And I picked up another album called Ring a Ding Ding, which features the coffee song, which was this weird novelty song. It's great jazzy song about how much coffee they have in Brazil, which is really funny lyrics. Because I was still like, that's Sinatra. He's kind of like a funny joke, and I'll play, and this will be ironic. And then I started like really listening to the music and appreciating the music. But at the same time, it was hitting me at this very personal level of, when I was a senior in high school, there'd been a lot of changes in life. Real short, I fell for a girl, and it didn't work out, and is not her fault, and long story. But I'd never experienced something like it was the first time I experienced like it was almost chemical. That there was no rationale to it. And I graduated literally when everybody was throwing their caps. I was like trying not to weep because she had just broken up with me like at graduation. And I had never experienced that kind of devastation. I had, been broken up with and had things not worked out and cried at the roller skating rink because so-and-so didn't want to skate with me. I'd been through all that. And I thought at like 18 when I graduated high school that I was world weary and been through it. And like, I remember like, I don't think my dad knew, my brother knew. And like, my brother was trying to cheer me up and it was like, come in here and listen to the Star Wars radio dramatization. And I was like, I don't even want to, there's no point. And like my dad took me on a bike ride and I remember looking at like the sunlight through the leaves and going, that's beautiful and I know it, but but I can't feel the beauty. It's all garbage. And I never, that was the first time I'd experienced like that level of devastation where you just kind of, and I still don't entirely understand why to this day. So as I got deeper into Sinatra's catalog, I had just started college and I no longer had the peer pressure of, I like Guns N' Roses and other kids like Guns N' Roses, but then I'd sometimes have to be like, yeah, and the Poison song was great too. And be like, no, it's not. No, it's not. I felt this peer pressure to like what everybody else liked. And there was this freedom of like, I can just like Frank Sinatra and it's nobody's business. If I want to shock someone in my visual art class, I can tell them that Frank Sinatra is my favorite. So there was this emergence of the new for me that was also the old, but with the heartbreak, Sinatra's power deeply is being a storyteller. And through the heart of his career, particularly in the 50s and the 60s, he had songs that were just absolute jubilation. This is what it sounds like to have the best day of your life. I've Got the World on a String is the happiest song in the world. And he has the saloon songs, which are just soul-wrenchingly devastating. And in the height of his career, he would alternate in the 50s and Capitol Records between a swinging album with just jubilation and a saloon album with like, you almost want to be broken up with so you can feel what Frank Sinatra feels in Only the Lonely and In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. And he has an album called When No One Cares. It's Ken, I know you would like some of these saloon songs because I know you've been there. So it was for me like the first time that I was truly like, oh wow, something from the past understands me in the present. And it ties into what we're talking about with our nostalgia episode of realizing I grew up thinking like, yeah, the 50s were bad. I know about, everything that went on in the civil rights movement and how awful it was for people and, all these things that I was ready to just kind of throw away everything before I was born. And the realization that, that impression that Phil Hartman does, that's who they thought Sinatra was at the end of his career. That's not who he was. That there's value in the past, and also learning that he was a huge champion for civil rights early on. Won a Special Academy Award for this short film he made called The House I Live In, where he teaches kids not to discriminate against one another. That's true American values. So it was shocking to me too to experience him culturally of like, I've been lied to about who this person is in almost the other way. We talk on our nostalgia episode about sometimes we get lied to about the glory of the past. I got lied to that there was nothing of value in the past, and Sinatra was my introduction to that.
Big Giant ForceCenter, OtherCenter, well said on the music and career of Sinatra, and you're speaking a lot of things that just are so familiar with me. That was my introduction as well. Phil Hartman, who I love, play that, and the cars of it all that kind of stuff. And I love when you first learn about pop culture, and often it is as it is at that time, and so that becomes Old Man Frank, and then you start to slowly learn. If you're lucky, you get to learn all of it. You get to learn the truth, both the good, the bad, the complicated nature of him, and you're talking about the civil rights stuff early on in his career. That was part of who he was and never left him, and all those kind of stories. It's fascinating. And the legends, the tales, whether true or not, the steak Sinatra dinners you get to enjoy. You really get to feel the full breadth of what he's done. But at the core of it is this uniquely generational talent, right? Like there's a reason and I say that a lot, but I just sometimes think the answer is the answer, and that voice, that was, and the persona, and who he was, it just is the reason it took off. And I love it. Like you talked about earlier, the falls, the rise, that's the reason he was such a long career. And I really appreciate Frank. I think I've appreciated him more over time. Ironically, I'll say, it's one of the reasons I really started to turn a different eye to Frank was the 2 shots of sad, 1 shot of happy from Bono, and I'm with you on that there, and no surprises there. One choice.
Yeah, and I could go on and on, but I'm gonna edit myself. The last thing I'll say is, if you just want to check out one Frank Sinatra song, go to the song that I want played at my funeral. It is on the album "Come Dance with Me." Just Google "Dancing in the Dark" Frank Sinatra.
Dancing in the Dark. All right, not a Springsteen song. Okay. The boss not on our list here. Okay, Jen, your number 1 choice. Well, actually, who knows? Could be Springsteen coming in at number 1. No, who knows? Jen, you're closing out our show. What is your number 1 choice for your favorite band or artist, solo artist?
My favorite band is the Grateful Dead.
Wow.
My husband was really surprised. I'm like, are you joking? But let me preface this by saying I don't do drugs. I never have done drugs. I got to say that, because anytime I say
you like Beastie Boys, I hear they sniff glue.
Oh God, my mom has no idea that I went and I saw a few Grateful Dead concerts when Jerry Garcia was still alive. And let me tell you, there were a lot of things being done. I was completely sober, however. I mean, I could have a whole conversation around the Dead community, which, I mean, if you ever went to one of their concerts, it really was like a village where you could like trade things. Like I could bring my beaded jewelry and exchange it for like banana bread, or it just was this wonderful group of people that would literally tour with the band. And they were a bunch of hippies, and it was really, really special, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But what I love about the Grateful Dead is that they borrow from so many different musical styles. So one of my favorite albums is their 1970s album, Blues for Allah. And it's got kind of like this groovy, folksy vibe. But then you also have Shakedown Street, which is kind of like a disco kind of album. And then you have the American Beauty album, which has like all of their classics, which is a great place to start if you've never really listened to the Grateful Dead. But what they are best known for are their jam sessions, which notoriously, and in concert, let me tell you, they would go on for 20 minutes. And depending on how inebriated Jerry Garcia was. But the best jam album, I think, is Skull and Roses from 1971. It's a little bit more contained. So you get some of like their blues and rock and roll vibes, but you also do get a little bit of like their spacey vibes, which is kind of fun. But it's not so crazy that you're going to get lost if you're not on drugs. So, but I love them so much. And I wear my Grateful Dead shirts proudly, which are now in style, which is kind of funny. I'm not one of those to say, oh, do you name one, song from their album? But there is something I just always think about those memories and that time in Las Vegas and Los Angeles when I saw the Dead.
Great.
Yeah.
This is why we did the list. I did not know that Jen owns Birkenstocks, cargo shorts, and follows the Dead around. All right. I
used to make my own clothes. I would trade them. Patchwork dresses and Birkenstock clogs before they were in fashion. I did not shave my armpits. That's where we're going. That's where we're going with it.
I have a question about the music itself, because you're talking about like the culture of them and the experience of them, which is great and amazing. A lot of the music we've been talking about today is either like kind of explosive, energetic, makes you feel alive, or really, really soulful, is there with you in the depths of your despair. My understanding of Grateful Dead, and I'm not an expert at all, is that their music is very much, let's all just chillax. Is that fair? And what is the emotional appeal of experiencing just their music?
It's like being in the ocean and you're kind of bobbing along, and you're being floated, carried by the waves in a kind of rocking way. It's the best way for me to describe it.
Yeah.
Or if you're driving through a forest and you have this canopy of trees over you and you hear the birds, like that to me is Franklin's Tower, that song. It feels like expansive. I mean, I'm not, obviously I haven't done drugs, but like it does kind of feel like you're opening your mind to something beyond yourself. And I really need that because I have a lot of anxiety and I tend to, spiral and whatever. And the Grateful Dead helps me get beyond myself and feel that there are other things, there are other forces out there. Very much why I love Star Wars. So yeah, there really is something you can tap in if you like. They have kind of country songs, more bluesy kind of things. But yeah, for me, my favorites are like the groove, the riding the waves.
Wow.
That's a wonderful, beautiful description. Makes a ton of sense. And it also does sound like you're doing a commercial for Grateful Dead. They're a natural high.
On this 2-disc set.
So my one big thing here. So this is a great choice. Totally get it. My sister always will be a fan of the Grateful Dead. The day Jerry passed away, it was very bad, traumatic for her. Being a rock DJ in the mid-90s, we did actually at a kind of a station that had been a classic rock station and kind of transitioned to a modern alt rock station. We definitely played a lot of classic stuff. So the Dead always showed up. But the question I have to ask, Jen, how much do you hate me that Touch of Grey is my favorite Grateful Dead song?
I really like Touch of Grey.
Touch of Grey is a perfect radio single. It's a great song. And I used to love it then, but now it means a lot more to me now.
Yeah. No, that is, I listen to it too all the time. And actually I like that it was such a popular song because it gives like a sense of like, I don't know, not legitimacy, but they were kind of seen as like, oh, those wacky people. Right. But that was such a hit. And I think you can put it on, and I wouldn't say it's a crowd pleaser, but people don't mind. People don't mind. Yeah. My husband doesn't mind. Okay. Not so sure about the other stuff, which is why I usually play it by myself.
So it is a real gateway. I remember like always being tortured when that song came on the radio. It's like, I like this and I know all the lyrics and I want to sing along, but it also makes me sad.
Yes.
Really? Oh, but they have that fun groove out there. You can do like your spins.
I love it.
I'm talking about, memories of, it's being, poised at the cassette deck of, do I want to record this one or not? And so I got to revisit Touch of Grey and see, now that I do have more than a touch of gray, how it affects me.
Yeah, it's just a great song. It's a great song. Anyways, a great band. A reason that they are so loved. I'm blown away by Jen chasing the Dead.
Yes.
Love that.
Yes. If Jerry hadn't died, I would have been on the road with them.
There you go. All right. We've done it. A supersized edition, and we could have done a lot more, and we'll do this again. We could revisit all these artists, all these songs. Hey, maybe we'll do our bands you need to know. Though Darkest of the Hillside Thickets might also be on that list as well. Love that there. So we're out of here today. We want to thank you all. We also want to remind you that you can support the show by going to Audible, brought to you by Audible. We are audibletrial.com/ForceCenter is where you can go. Over 108,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Get that book, 1971, A Whole Lot of Noise by David Hepworth. Music in 71, an important year in which music started to affect culture in a way it hadn't, at least in the rock genre before that. All right. You can follow us on a lot of spots. Just search and find us, including Threads. We are there. Instagram, YouTube as well. Podcasts available in a lot of different spots. Merch available, tpublic.com/ForceCenter. You can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Find me at Ken Napzok. Jennifer, where do you want them to go to tweet their deadhead stories to you?
Yeah, you'll find me most active on Instagram at Jennifer Landa, but I'm on all the social media platforms at Jennifer Landa.
All right, Joseph, people are going to have a lot to say, I'm sure, about your choices as well. Where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. You can find me on all the social media. I'm trying to build up a presence there on Blue Sky and Threads in case one of those actually survives. But you can find me just about anywhere at Joseph Scrimshaw. If you are listening to this on the day we are releasing it, It is my birthday, I believe. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, my birthday's on Thursday. We'll release this on Thursday. So I did want to bring back something I've talked about in the past, but if you want to give me a birthday gift, go to the website, votefwd.org, and see if it's for you. It's an organization called Vote Forward, and what they do is they have campaigns to specific states. They're trying out some campaigns about specific issues, but you print out a form letter, but then you write in for yourself why you vote, why you think it matters to you. And this organization has followed up this effort of sending out these million letters with studies to see if it actually works. And it's having a pretty significant increase in voter turnout. So it is really a way to encourage people to use their power. And as much as we have strong opinions about things, and those things can just turn into kind of yelling at one another on social media, this is something concrete that will actually get people out to the polls, that will actually make a difference. So if you're at all interested in that, I highly encourage checking out Vote Forward at votefwd.org.
Absolutely great to it. Birthday gift for Mr. Joseph Scrimshaw there. Boop doop da doo. There you go.
Some Grateful Dead scatting right there.
We'll see y'all. Thank you. This was fun. We'll do it again. Life has been ranked.